I'm Bruce from the Pineapple Thief, and you're listening to MOROW.com. That question is obviously asked a lot of times, and when I started the Pineapple Thief in 1999, just as a solo project on my own, and before that I was in a band called Vogue Unicorn, and I phoned the guy at the label that we were on and said, look, I'm doing some songs, would you put them out? And I sent him, I think it was Private Paradise was the first song that I ever wrote, and he phoned back and said, yeah, that's great, I'm going to put the album out. And he said, what you called? I need a name. So I didn't have any time, and I was watching a film called Eve's Bayou, which is a small independent American film, and there's a scene in there where a girl steals a pineapple, and this voodoo lady says, I can see you, pineapple thief. And I was with my girlfriend, and I said, oh, well, that's a good name, that'll be fine. That was it. I didn't think for 1 minute that I'd be here 12 years later with 9 albums and just done a gig in Paris to, it was, so yeah, it's just one of those things.
I'm just one step away, 'cause I am just...
Well, non-musical family. I didn't start playing guitar till I was 14, 15, and I remember at the time I was saying to myself, oh, it's too late, I'm never going to be any good. And luckily I met my best friend at school, Neil Randall, who I started Vogue Unicorn with, got me, gave me the motivation to learn to play guitar, and it was really through that through Neil that I learned to sort of understand music and enjoy music, and the group of friends that I had at school, we got into 70s progressive rock, and that was in the 80s when it was all neo-romantic stuff, because we didn't like all the Duran Duran and all that kind of thing. So we went back to the 70s, and I grew up listening to Camel and Yes and Supertramp and the Alan Parsons Project, and I don't know, it was a natural progression that I just discovered a love for music. But there was never any, I never had any family that got me into music. It was off my own back. So it was. Right, so we started in 1999, and that was me on my own in the studio. I played all the instruments, did all the singing, and we released that on Cyclops Records, a tiny little record label that I think it took about 6 months to sell 500 copies. It was very, very low key, but just enough for them to say, can you do another one? So I thought, okay, I can do another one. So then I did the second album called 137, again just me. Got a few more fans, that sold 1,000 copies. Then I did Variations on Dream, which was just me. That went on to sell 2,000 or 3,000 copies, and by that point you're selling enough units for people to notice you a little bit. And so we get people saying, Bruce, can you come and play our festival? We want to put you on can you come and play Holland? And I'd say I can't because I haven't got a band. So then I got my friends, because luckily I'd been in bands before, so I had some musical friends. Got a band together and we started to play live. That was a big moment. Then I released 10 Stories Down. We carried on gigging. After that was Little Man, and then Stephen Wilson from Porcupine Tree heard us and said, what are you doing on this tiny label? You need to get out there, because he really liked the stuff we were doing. So he put in a good word for us at Kscope, and that was probably that was the turning point in our career, where before that we were an underground, hardly anyone knew who we were. And then in 2007 we signed with Kscope and released Tightly Unwound. And I know that speaking to people, a lot of people say, I've only known you for the last 2-3 albums. I had no idea you had 6 albums before. And then we did Someone Who's Missing, which by that point we had Storm Thorgerson doing the artwork, and then now where are we now? 2012. Just released All the Wars, and we're still, luckily we've been on this upward trajectory all that time. start off tiny and a little slow trajectory upwards, and for that reason, it's just the band has just been a joy to be in since day one, because we've always been getting bigger. Nowhere near as big as we want to be, obviously.
One more step away, 'cause I am just one step.
Well, it's about conflict and reconciliation, and the two things. Ultimately, sometimes you don't get the reconciliation, and I was obsessed with the amount of conflict that people were spending with people who you love, and I could witness this, and that's why it's called All the Wars, because at the end, when everything's said and done, and you look back on your life with whoever you love, and if all you can see is all the wars, that was just a tragic thing for me, and it was something I witnessed. And if you don't get reconciliation at some point in your life, then it's a tragic thing, because when someone's gone and passed away, it's very, very hard. If you're in that, you turn to religion or spirituality, but otherwise you've got nothing. And for that reason, I wrote the songs purely because basically it's a love. They're all love songs at the end of the day, but quite dark love songs. And I still think they're positive, because for me, if I listen back to my own stuff, it's like a wake-up call to be a better person, and not to look back on all the wars, and just with the people that you love, and that's really what the album is about.
So it's more wars between people than wars in the world.
Yeah, certainly. It's certainly not about wars, and that's the other thing, is because I could never sing about something that I haven't experienced. So I would never dream of trying to sing about a real war, because thankfully I've never had to experience that horror. So.
Your eye will give.
Not in the writing, no, but they do take part in the production. So once I have a song and I record it in my studio at home, then they come in and input their parts, and the sounds has changed recently, sort of the last 3 to 4 years, because of the live show, and that's all about the band, and like tonight the songs worked because the crowd were really into it, and that's because when I write, I think about what it will be like when I'm on stage, whereas in the early days that wasn't a consideration, because we'd never played live. So that's a big change. So the band is really, really important. I don't think we'd be where we are today without the live band.
Okay, this is why the songs are rockier in this album than the previous ones.
I think, you're probably right, and that's not to say that I haven't lost my love for the atmospheric and the layered stuff that I used to do, and I will do more stuff like that in the future, but not with my eye on the live show. And the energy that we have live, I think, does drive me to write like that. A guy called Mark Mawson, and he's a very, very talented photographer, and he's worked with Paul McCartney and Elton John before. And when I saw his work, it's some photography, underwater photography, that he specialises in. And I wanted to use it because I thought it was perfect for the album. And luckily, because he liked the music, we were able to do a deal, because normally we wouldn't have been able to afford it. So it was. I know that our covers have some people have said other artists like Marillion and Porcupine Tree and Anathema, for example, they're quite consistent with the people that they use to do their covers. But for me, every album is different, and I like the fact that we had Storm do Someone Who Is Missing, and that was a dream come true, because as a kid I loved all the Hypnosis stuff and buying albums and gatefolds and flicking through. The guy did Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here. It was just unbelievable to meet the guy. But I still thought, well, the next album, let's see what else is out there. So yeah, it was. I think it's a perfect cover for the album. Well, yeah. Again, as a kid, I always used to look at rock albums that used orchestras, and I loved it, and I always adored hearing, when it worked, rock music with orchestration. And it was only because we've been as successful as we have that we were able to afford to do the strings. And we went to Prague and we recorded a 22-piece section. And I remember sitting in the room while they were playing, and I was like, it was difficult not to get emotional, because it was a dream come true to have that amazing sound on the record, and it was a real privilege to have that. Yeah, so I've got the bug now. I'm going to have strings on every album from now on. So. Well, that's a good question, because every album we do does cause controversy, and fans there's always a split when we release a new album. When Someone Who Is Missing came out, there were people who loved the fact that we went quite, we had lots more synths, and it was quite intense rock music, and a load of people that were saying, oh, I don't like that, I want Variations on Dream, I want what we were saying. And then with this album, which is more of a rock album, more of an organic album, we got loads of people saying, I want more like Someone Who Is Missing, and so, but there's always a core that just appreciate everything we do, and we always attract and lose fans with every release. And all I know is it sold more than already sold more than our other albums. So the reaction I've had is very positive. But that's not to say I've not seen people who just always. I think when you're in a band and you say, here's my album, come here, look at me, and people can have every right to say, no, I hate it. So that's fair enough.
Those eyes, they're telling me we're tears.
I can say this without fibbing, because we've never experienced a crowd like that. It was in England, a crowd is very much like this. You go there, and I say that, but we have our fans in England, and they're very good. But if you go to a venue that is with people that are checking you out, it's very much okay, come and impress me. But tonight, the crowd was so warm, and as soon as we finished the first song, everyone was screaming and clapping along to every song, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. I can say this without any exaggeration, and that was the best audience we played to, as far as energy and atmosphere is concerned.
So, are you coming back to play more gigs in France?
Well, that's the idea, and the thing is, even with a band that is perceived to be as successful as the Pineapple Thief, it's not easy to get gigs, and we had to work really hard to get a gig in Bordeaux last night and a gig in Paris today. And what I'm hoping is that the promoters will see that we've got a fan base, and that we did what we did tonight, and now we'll come back in next March and do a proper full set.